The gag order from Judge Juan Merchan has been expanded, but some people say maybe Trump has already violated it. And the question is how? Here is what Drudge posted on his website, and Mediaite was where he linked. But he says the gag order was expanded. Trump violates it? What? And what is this all about? Well, Donald Trump posted this video over on Truth Social, and you'll see when I took this screenshot, it was the pinned truth. There is a comment about the judge's daughter, Judge Juan Merchan's daughter. And of course, we ask, what did that order say specifically? Did it say Trump could say stuff about this, that Trump could cause other people to say stuff about not cause other people, and maybe Trump couldn't share other people or spread statements about it? What did it say? Well, we're going to take a look at it, obviously. But after the gag order came out, Trump was well upset, as he should be. He says, you know, I was informed that another corrupt New York judge called Juan Merchan gagged me so that I cannot talk about the corruption and the conflicts taking place in his courtroom with respect to a case that everyone, including the DA, felt should never have been brought. They can talk about me, but I can't talk about them. That sounds fair, doesn't it? This judge should be recused and the case should be thrown out. There has virtually never been a more conflicted judge than this one. Election interference at its worst. And so that's what Trump said. Now, Trump also then posted this, and we're going to take a look at the gag orders. Remember that the old gag order said this. It said, Trump is not, okay, he must refrain from doing these things: making or directing others to make public statements, okay, about witnesses or anybody involved. So making or directing others to make public statements about counsel, members of the court staff, DA staff, family members of counsel or staff, if those statements are made, right? So the first one didn't include the judge or the DA's family. And then making or directing others to make public statements about jurors. Okay, so that's the first one. Now, at the ruling in the second one, here's the change. So again, it's amended as indicated below. Making or directing others to make public statements, right? That's the same. Now, making or directing others to make public statements about counsel, members of the court staff or the DA's staff, and here's the change: the members of any counsel, staff member, family members of any counsel, staff member, the court, or the DA, if those statements are made to interfere, or other comments about the jurors. But you'll notice, something's missing. Doesn't say you can't share statements that other people have said. So maybe Trump can just start re-truthing statements from our show. Mr. President, we're here, standing by, ready to create the perfect clip for you to share with all of America. But of course, the clips that Trump is sharing are talking about Judge Juan Merchan's daughter. And this is the thing that they're saying is maybe violating the order. This is all Trump did. Reposted this on his Truth, quoting Jonathan Turley, saying the integrity of the New York legal system is at stake here. That statement here, this message from Trump, this Truth post doesn't seem to be illegal at all. He's allowed to talk about the system. He's not talking about the daughter or anybody here. We are going to fast forward to about 4:30 because this is where the clip comes in from Mr. Brian Kilmeade, who asks about
order put on the former president of the United States in the Alvin Bragg case because they don't want him talking about prosecutor Matthew Colangelo and they don't want him talking about the judge's daughter. But Matthew Colangelo was in the Justice Department with Joe Biden. That is outrageous to President Trump. Also, the fact is the judge's daughter is a activist who works for Kamala Harris, and there was some dispute on whether she did have a picture up on a website with Donald Trump behind bars. That, to me, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm a little concerned about that the judge has a daughter who feels this way.
I've actually been opposed to gag orders for years, particularly efforts to gag you, Brian.
But that's been widespread and well known.
That's just coming from it's coming from your colleagues, which is really no. But you're absolutely right. This is a really controversial order, and I think it's wrong. You know, you've got Michael Cohen, who is going on the air every night attacking Trump, or basically campaigning against him. He's not allowed to respond. Now, I would prefer that Trump leave these attacks or issues raised with the judge's family to his counsel. I think that's always the better approach.
Better approach when you're not a presidential candidate, maybe, when you are not having to communicate with, half the country, theoretically the entire country and the world. You want to expose all of this. The attorneys are great, but the attorneys are not Donald Trump. In, many cases, if you're a defendant, the attorney has more, exposure and credibility than the defendant does. The attorney can say, I'm going to call the news media and say, hey, look what they're doing to my client, whatever. The client's just like, yo, I'm a client. I need some help. So that apparently is what Trump is allowed to do, right? So he can just share videos that talk about the corrupt judge and the daughter lawyer who is working for the Democrats, who posts video of Trump in jail and all sorts of things. And I guess that's going to be the new strategy. Maybe Judge Juan Merchan will gag Trump a third time. Maybe he'll modify it again to say, and now you can't share anything either. We'll see if that happens or not. But let's take a look at some of the filings that led to this gag order. This is the response from Trump, right? So Trump submitted this immediately. He says, you know, Trump has a right to speak. First of all, Trump submits this saying we don't need to clarify anything. Contrary to Alvin Bragg's argument, all right, your gag order, which Trump reserves all rights to appeal, which they're probably going to drop any day now. So plainly, it says that the original order does not apply to family members of the court. So we don't need to expand it, although the judge did. Now, the fact that the gag order has been publicly interpreted the way that we read it means it doesn't need clarification. But let's be clear about this. Bragg's abuse of this process, which is trying to restrict Trump's constitutionally protected speech, is highlighted by the fact that they failed entirely to address the standard that was proposed and what the standard is for the court staff. Now, they also left all that in place, and so they say the court should reject the request to expand this gag order. It's already unlawful. This already improperly restricts campaign advocacy by Trump, the presumptive nominee, the leading candidate in 2024. Now, in support of this motion, Bragg and the Colangelo lawyers, they cite 2 social media posts. That's not enough for them to meet their burden. These 2 posts alone are not the solidity of evidence that's necessary, and they say Trump's campaign advocacy on issues that bear on his candidacy, as well as the appearance of impropriety associated with these proceedings that warrants recusal, which we got in the other motion, is not a basis for violating the First and the Sixth Amendments yet again by expanding the gag order. If you expand this gag order, Judge Juan, it's going to be particularly inappropriate in light of the fact that the court appears to have recently violated a canon of judicial propriety. Judge already violated the rules by making public statements about this case. You used the Office of Court Administration to play PR for your daughter, Judge, which is going to require your recusal. Now, under these circumstances, Trump must be permitted to speak on these issues. It's critical. He's a leading presidential candidate, and we cannot materially interfere, and none of these statements are intended to materially interfere with these proceedings or cause harm to anyone. And so we should be allowed to talk about it. Now, here's the background on this. Again, this is from Trump's team. These are lawyers writing. This is them acting as officers of the court, saying we can, this is what we believe happened, and we have good faith basis to believe it. They say in March 2022, more than 1 year before the indictment and before locking her X account, Bragg's wife reposted on social media. Now we're switching gears to Bragg's wife. Bragg's wife, Mrs. Bragg, she's out. She posted, finally, a bit of good news in the Manhattan DA criminal case against Trump. March 22, Alvin got elected before that because the people have Trump nailed on felonies, right? Bragg's, who is supposed to be a prosecutor who's not a political hack, who's not a partisan prosecutor. Like, I know that's the norm now because we got Tish James, we got Big Fannie Willis, we got Jack Smith, we got Alvin Bragg, right? I know it's all like, we got partisan prosecutors everywhere we look, and all the J6 prosecutors, by the way. The whole DOJ, FBI, I get it. But that's not how it's supposed to be. So before, during, or after that post, your Honor's daughter and her company, Authentic Campaigns, Lauren's company, profited from offering strategic advice, profiting from preparing text emails and social media posts and other consulting services about campaign advocacy, and they generated funds for Trump's political rivals, including advertisements that specifically referenced and solicited funds based on this case. Daughter got rich. And similarly, before, during, and after the indictment was unsealed from Bragg's office, Bragg watched silently as their star witness, Michael Cohen, assailed Trump, including through political advocacy supportive of Trump's political rivals. Now, at Trump's arraignment on April 4th, the court recognized that prior restraints are extremely problematic. So they're telling Judge Juan, saying, hey, Judge, you said this before, just reminding you. Certainly the court would not impose a gag order at this time, even if it were requested. Such restraints are the most serious and the least intolerable on the First Amendment rights. And that does apply doubly to Mr. Trump because he's a candidate for presidency of the United States. So those First Amendment rights are critically important, obviously. Oh, but the judge didn't know that his daughter was busted at that time. For almost a year, until February 22nd, neither the court nor the people raised any concerns about the public statements by Trump as he successfully campaigned for presidency. They were pretty silent, huh? But on February 22nd, without any explanation regarding the timing of the motion, the people, Alvin Bragg, and maybe his wife too, I don't know if she's involved now, to the court to impose a gag order. They asked, can you please gag Trump? They said, it's because trial's right around the corner. we read that filing. Now, the gag order motion claimed to seek relief that was identical to what Chutkan has granted. But insofar as Bragg submitted evidence specific to this case, they relied on an affidavit from this guy, Nicholas Pistilli, who focused on events from nearly a year ago in March and April of 2023. Now, this was 3 weeks following March 18, 23. Now, this apparently in this affidavit, it was describing threats by third parties, so-called terroristic threats by third parties a year ago. He said that there was a volume of unspecified threats that had no connection to this case. So neither Bragg nor the court ever addressed these evidentiary deficiencies. They just imposed the gag, right? Like, okay, why do we need a gag based on this evidence? Okay, what is the evidence? Well, it's this guy who's not talking about anything related to this case at all, and it's from a year ago. And the judge is like, oh, perfect, exactly what we need. Thanks, your gag. On March 17th, the AP published an article disclosing that Juan Mercan had participated in an interview with last week with the media. On March 17th, that's not long ago, this year, Your Honor, Judge Juan did an interview. Now, the court appears to have taken this step while Trump's pre-motion letter seeking leave to file for a motion of adjournment, wow, based on pretrial publicity was pending, and the court did not address that request. Whoa! Did not even permit the defense to file the motion until the March 25th hearing. This is wild. Okay, so we'll follow a timeline here. Okay, so this is the timeline. Trump files the motion saying, Your Honor, we have pre-trial publicity problems right here. Okay, that was on March 10th. Okay, March 10th, pre-trial publicity. They're saying, Your Honor, we cannot have a fair trial on March 10th. We need to have a hearing on this, Judge. Can we please file a motion? The judge then gets this motion. It's one page, right? It's the permission slip. The judge then on March 17th, he shows up here for an interview. Judge shows up afterwards, goes and does an interview on the 17th. He's like, pre-trial publicity? I got an interview scheduled on Wednesday with the AP. So Trump says there's a lot of publicity. The judge goes and increases the publicity. And then on March 25th, the judge says, okay, go ahead now and actually file your substantive pre-trial publicity motion. Isn't that nice? So the judge is going to go be the star of the show first until he actually permits them to file. So according to reports of the interview, Your Honor indicated that the court wouldn't talk about the case, but then you did so anyways. The rules say, quote, a judge shall not make any public comment about a pending or impending proceeding in any court within the United States or its territories, and the judge shall require similar abstention on the part of court personnel subject to the judge's discretion and control. Now, Your Honor repeatedly stated in this interview that one, quote, getting ready for the historic trial is intense, and the court is, quote, striving to make sure that I've done everything I could to be prepared and to make sure that we dispense justice. The judge said, there's no agenda here. We want to follow the law. We want justice to be done. That's all we want. Now, as well-intentioned as those remarks may have been, those sentiments should go without saying, okay? That's what we all want is justice. You don't need to say it. The comments appear to be inconsistent with the law, which includes a mandate that was even more important in the context of Trump's then pending and unaddressed request to file to leave to submit our motion. You should not have done and given that interview when we said we have a problem with all of the publicity. On March 26, Juan then adopted the people's proposed gag order in a ruling that made specific reference to Trump's comments about Bragg. The gag order states the following that we've read. Now, 2 days later then, the people submitted this motion in the form of a one-page pre-motion letter, and so then we had to file opposition by 2 p.m. on April 1st. Now, the court should deny the motion, okay? Trump has not violated the gag order. Expanding the gag order would be unconstitutional. It's already unconstitutional. It would be more unconstitutional if you do it. Now, the gag order does not prohibit the public statements that are the basis for the motion. The pertinent provision of the gag order is what we've read. It's unambiguous. It doesn't cover the daughter. Now, consistent with that reality, the people cite some other case, and the opinion notes that your daughter, the opinion indicates the court was aware of prior public statements about Your Honor's daughter as relevant to the recusal issue. Okay, we've already brought this up, so you know we know about it. And you did not extend the gag order originally, it's a great point, to cover the daughter. So why now? It's because the public's really talking about it, isn't it? It's because Trump's talking about it, isn't it? Saying no violation has occurred here, and there's no violation, and so no basis for this contempt warning proposed by Bragg. Now, the motion also overlooks a key feature of the gag, which says it has to be intended to interfere, and Trump's social media posts are not doing that, okay? Trump's posts amplified defense arguments about the need for recusal that have already been and will continue to be the subject of our motions, showing the bias and supporting what the defense is already saying. The post also addressed specific political opponents who are clients of Authentic, where Your Honor's daughter is a partner and an executive, and they responded to media reports regarding a social media account attributed to your daughter. Now, Trump also noted in one of the posts that those issues are relevant to the election and to our corrupted justice system. Now, such protected political advocacy does not reflect any intent to, quote, materially interfere with the proceedings, and no form of speech, the U.S. Supreme Court said in 1995, is entitled to greater protection than core political speech, like when you're running a campaign or when you're talking about political partisanship in the justice system. The First Amendment affords us strong protection, and we also have a right as the public. The right to listen to Trump's campaign speech has its fullest and most urgent application when someone is running for office, especially the presidency. Therefore, interpreting this gag order is unconstitutional. So moreover, Trump's comments about your daughter, by the way, the comments about your daughter, Lauren, as properly understood, are a criticism of the court's prior decision not to recuse itself. They try to distinguish this between criticisms of Your Honor, so we can criticize the court and Your Honor, which are fully protected by the First and the Sixth Amendment. They say those aren't covered by the gag order, and references to family members are thus illusory because one's legitimate, and constitutionally protected criticism of the court is about the court's failure to recuse themselves or the judge, notwithstanding one member of the court's immediate family member having a financial interest in ongoing attacks against Trump, including in this case by virtue of her senior role at Authentic. And so if you extend the gag order would cover the court itself. See how they're doing that? The judge did this, which is why it's such a cowardly thing to do, because it's exactly right. The court is covering itself. You can't talk about my daughter because that impugns my legitimacy. It impugns my integrity. We say, yeah, that's true. That's the whole point. The challenge social media posts from Bragg also go at Trump's core First and Sixth Amendment rights. The advocacy was necessary. What Trump said was necessary and appropriate in the current environment. The court has given a public interview, Judge did, that included comments about the case during a period where the court failed to address Trump's request for pretrial publicity. Trump says, can we have less publicity, please? The judge says, I'll think about it as soon as I'm done with my interviews. Subsequent to the challenge post by Trump, the court weighed in again by issuing a public statement through the Office of Court Administration, which had now been commandeered to act as a public relations arm of the judge and the family, regarding the social media account that had been used by the judge's daughter. Now, in short, a criminal defendant does not, quote, interfere with a criminal prosecution, as that term is used, by exercising their constitutional right. It's not interference to call out government corruption. It's our duty. Now, careful enforcement of the materiality provision is necessary to protect First Amendment freedoms. Now, we talk about mens rea and how these things are interpreted. And so the gag order does not apply to family members at all. And so therefore, Trump did not violate the gag order. And this entire gag order, by the way, is an improper prior restraint. The people bear a heavy burden on this. Recent social media posts are constitutionally protected speech, and they do not constitute, to posts, a solidity of evidence necessary to strip someone's speech from them. SCOTUS has never allowed the government to prohibit candidates from communicating with voters during an election. Trump has the same rights. The gag order already violates them in a way that implicates federalism concerns. The federal government has a pretty strong interest in making sure we have coherent federal election that is free and fair. We know what happened last time. They told us it was free and fair. Half the country fell off the map saying, well, we're not so sure about that. We should actually have free and fair elections. Then more people would believe in it. So now the question is, can a state violate and usurp a candidate's federal right to speak? Might be a great issue on appeal. Says the court imposed prior restraint of the gag order is not addressing this other case where Judge Brennan expressed concern that the prevention addressing that case, so expanding the gag order, would exacerbate these problems. And so another great filing from Todd Blanche, Susan Nicholas, BlancheLaw.com, NicholasLaw.com. Conclusion, they say, for the foregoing reasons, Your Honor, deny the motion. Now, of course, the judge did not do that. The judge obviously expanded it. He says, one day following the issuance of my order, Trump made several statements attacking a family member of this court. This is Juan Mercan, now fighting for his daughter. Now, contrary to the position that they took in opposition to a prior motion, that his statements are core political speech, this pattern of attacking family members of presiding jurists, me the judge, and attorneys assigned to his case serves no legitimate purpose. purpose. You see that? No, 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 no. It's no legitimate purpose for this judge. It's a very legitimate purpose for the rest of us. It's clearly legitimate because it implicates the judge. We have questions about his rulings now, about the legitimacy, the appearance of impropriety, if not the actual conflict that exists here. The judge has commandeered using court institutions to now act as PR entities. The judge is now giving interviews, right? The judge is clearly a conflicted person, and he has apparently talked to his daughter, according to her podcast, about Trump tweets when he was the president in 2019, talking about how those tweets were aggravating to him. Okay, so he should be gone off the case, but no legitimate purpose because it undermines their credibility. Now, it merely injects fear in those assigned or called to participate, that not only they, but their family members as well are fair game for Trump's vitriol. She's a political consultant who is in the arena of politics oppositional to Trump. So here's the judge. That's the ultimate crux of the holding, okay? Such a cowardly thing to do, to insulate yourself from any criticism by using your daughter as insulation is just about as low as it gets. Courts are understandably concerned about First Amendment rights, especially when he's a public figure, but the instant matter is different, okay? The conventional David versus Goliath roles are no longer in play because Trump's words have power on countless others. And the threats, here you go, to the integrity of the judicial proceeding, okay? It's the same synonym for integrity of democracy, attacks on democracy, no longer limited to the swaying of minds because the people say multiple witnesses have already expressed concerns. Alvin Bragg said multiple witnesses have already expressed their concerns about their safety. And so it's no longer a mere possibility. The threat is very real. Admonitions are not enough, nor is reliance on restraint. The average observer must now, after hearing Trump's recent attacks, draw the conclusion that if they become involved in these proceedings, they should worry for not only themselves, but for their loved ones as well. If their loved ones are involved in the attack, then yeah, they're fair game. They get to be involved in it. That's the cost of playing the game. Trump is not attacking some 8-year-old girl who's reading romance novels somewhere, okay? This woman is a major player raising $100 million for the Democrats. So this is all just, a red herring. It's a shiny object. Our loved ones are under attack. Such concerns will undoubtedly interfere with the fair administration of justice and constitutes a direct attack on the rule of law itself. If you criticize the court, it's an attack on the rule of law. See how that goes? That is not America at all. This is the same, democratic garbage. This is tyrannical judiciary in action. Again, all citizens called to participate in these proceedings must now concern themselves with not only their personal safety, but also attacks on their loved ones. That reality cannot be overstated. And Trump desperately attempts to justify and explain his dangerous rhetoric. This is the judge who's going to be presiding over this case. And he's blaming those attacks. Now, the arguments that counsel makes are strained and at worst baseless misrepresentations, right? They're uncorroborated. They rely on innuendo and exaggeration. Put mildly, the assortment of allegations that are presented as facts and cobbled together, they result in accusations that are disingenuous and not rational. The judge just decided it's not rational to attack his daughter, who everyone admits has a problematic X account and works for Kamala Harris and Adam Schiff. To argue that the most recent attacks, which included photographs, were necessary and appropriate in the current environment is farcical. The people argue in their submission that Trump's attacks, which he says, which are his free speech, which include referring to a prosecution last week as death, are based on transparent falsehoods. Bragg provides a plethora of compelling arguments, saying that Trump is intending to intimidate this court and to impede the orderly administration of this trial. That is the same garbage, remember, that Fani Willis came out with when motions were filed, and she even said that Jocelyn Wade's case may be interfering with her administration of justice, okay? If you come at these people, if you say you're a partisan hack, you are biased clearly, and we can't trust your judgment at all, get some integrity, please, and come back. And you have evidence to support that. That is part of justice, by the way, okay? In order to have orderly administration of a trial or justice, there is no order if you can't trust the judge. So you got to get that settled clear before anything else can happen. Otherwise, there is no court of law. And this judge has now, right, he's going to fail to recuse accuse himself again. But his daughter, he's going to just write off as saying this is farce. Like, this is embarrassing for this judge. It's innuendo and it's exaggeration. Can you explain that for us? Now, the people in their submission wanted some other things, and he says your motion is now granted. If Trump violates this, they're going to strip Trump of more rights. So he's already being stripped of his free speech rights. They'll now also strip him of his right to access the juror names. Now, it remains this court's fundamental responsibility to protect the integrity of the process, right? What integrity, Judge? Consistent with this decision, therefore, they are now granting Bragg's motion, and the main change here was that you cannot talk about family members of the court, the judge, his daughter, Lauren Mercon, who is clearly a Democrat operative. And so, now this is a great article I just wanted to flag for you. We'll just mention it briefly here, but the fact is there is a lot of smoke and fire behind the smoke. We have Lauren Mercon's firm. This is from Julie Kelly, a great piece over at declassified.live, says the ties between Mercon's child, so young and innocent, stop attacking his daughter, represents a major conflict in the hush money trial, okay? Lauren's firm was paid $4 million by Adam Schiff at the same time that Schifty was conspiring with Cohen to take down Trump. Cohen is going to be the star witness in this entire case, right? Now, you'll notice here some pretty big numbers, but she writes at declassified.live, the same month that Schiff and Schiff's campaign paid a new Chicago-based consulting firm $600K for digital media, the firm Authentic Campaigns was the people who got paid for that. It was headed by Lauren Mercon, 34-year-old daughter of the New York judge, now overseeing the so-called hush money case against Trump. According to a new analysis, Schiff's Senate campaign committee, he is running to replace the late Dianne Feinstein. Look at this number. Schifty has paid Authentic Campaigns more than $10 million. That's according to the Post. They also reported that Schiff cited the Bragg indictment in emails while looking for campaign donations. And of course, we got George Conway, who also can't get enough of Trump. And he was brought on as the so-called conservative lawyer for MSNBC. You see that there on the Chiron. And this is where he's talking about Trump being a psychopath. And I just want to play this so you can see kind of what a psychopath looks like when they're ranting about other people, because that's what George Conway sounds like here.
What is your take? Is this expanded order even enough to deal with that threat?
It may not be, because Donald Trump is a sociopath. He's a psychopath. Nothing will stop him from trying to do what he wants to do, which is to intimidate and roll over and attack anybody he feels is a threat to him. And he is feeling that threat more than ever from all different fronts. It's quite possible this may not be enough. I mean, he is a very, very destructive individual. He is mentally ill. He is very self-destructive, in particular, as we saw with the E. Jean Carroll trial, where he acted out in front of the jury and basically bought himself the punitive damages award that he had to post his $83 million bond for.
That was the case that George Conway was obviously involved in, right? George Conway, in my opinion, took advantage of a mentally deranged woman called E. Jean Carroll and then introduced her to Roberta Kaplan that launched the lawsuit after they changed the law to enable them to prosecute Trump in the first place.
Man isn't well, and he's going to continue to behave in an irrational fashion and in a bullying fashion and in a threatening fashion, because that's just the way he's built. And it's not...
It's weird, you know, to have these exchanges. It's like, is that all he does? He's supposed to be a conservative lawyer offering, I guess, legal analysis, but every time we play a clip from him, he's always just ranting. Trump's a psychopath, sociopath, demented, maniac, wants to bully everybody. It's like, are you going to give us some legal analysis at all? You're just going to call him a bully like every time you talk? Like, do you have a new point, a talking point at all? So apparently the gag order not preventing Trump, okay, from sharing statements about Lauren Mercon, the DNC Democrat operative who is raising a ton of money for Democrats and working directly against Trump and Trump's interests. Now sharing stuff about that on Truth Social, judge expanding the gag. We know that Donald Trump is saying that this is already unconstitutional and that they're reserving all of their appellate rights. So appeal likely coming down the pike any day now. And we're going to be here continuing to cover it, my friends. And so I hope you join us as we do. Thank you so much for subscribing and for liking this video and for inviting someone you know or love to come and join us when we go live, sharing a video, sharing a short form piece of content with them so they get a little taste of what happens here, because there's a lot that they're not seeing unless they're here joining us, unpacking it all. And so we'd also like to invite you to check out some of our links down in the description below. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is our members only community and a great way you can support the show, get some extra content about other topics that we can't get into here, and meet some amazing people while you do it. We'd love to see you there and back here on the next one. you.